FYI.
That's funny.
So we're kicking off. Hey, Nathan, today, once again, I'm Brandon. This is Nathan. We're just some resident professional IT nerds and business-oriented people.
Yes.
And here today, we are going to talk about email security. The one, the only email security. Nathan, today specifically, there's the tool sets within email security that are top of mind. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off with what are the tools you recommend for email security?
Yeah, I think the challenge is that email was designed in a time when we weren't thinking about security, right? Email was very much I had I was a conversation about this with somebody else this week, and they said email is just a paper airplane in the cyber internet, and you're hoping it lands in the right spot. And there's actually some truth to that. Like by default, it's a wing and a prayer. Hey, I'm sending to this guy. I think this is your email server. Let's send it. Let's see if it goes through. Oh, it went through. Great. But they also got 3 other email paper airplanes that have your name on it. Are those all real? I don't know. They're on paper. I got them. Right? Like there's some level of the default functionality of SMTP does not have a lot of SMTP is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. That's what email flows through. It doesn't have a lot of layers in it by default with the way the standard was built to kind of authenticate whether it's real, whether it should be trusted, whether it's been tampered with, whether it came from who you thought it came from. There's all these layers of security that we are starting to realize we need because it is such a big target. You know, the amount of junk mail we get, the amount of phishing we get, the sophistication of the phishing is getting pretty serious. And so it becomes a real challenge where you're getting invoices and payment details for $50,000 contracts in your email, and you're getting hacking emails from somebody in the same inbox. How do you trust them? How do you know? And how do your customers trust you? How do they know that you are who you say you are? What if somebody sends a fake invoice as your company? How do you verify that? That's a lot of what we're talking about here is kind of really the authenticity and trustworthiness of email is kind of the first burden to get through. Can you prove that your email is legit? And that's what a lot of these technologies are built on.
Just a caveat off that, as I got into the IT industry, I realized that email could have been sent by anybody at that point.
Yes.
I mean, you could set up an email server at your house and pretend to be a bigger company.
Yes.
And faking that, right? And nowadays, you literally have millions of dollars and you're talking all these codes and other things that are happening via email. Hey, send me this. Here's my wire transfer information.
Yes.
Here's this. Here's that. Wire me the money. And people are communicating back and forth with these, and yet some people aren't too concerned about the security.
Yeah.
So what would be like the first one that you would recommend?
Yeah, the way the protocols have been built to add security onto email, it's kind of a layering of tools over time. They've kind of started to build out these solutions to do it. And so the first technology that kind of has been deployed and is broadly accepted is a product called SPF, Sender Policy Framework. And basically, all of these solutions we're going to talk about today are built out in DNS. DNS runs everything. It's always DNS. You're creating a public record.
It's always DNS.
It's always DNS. If you're a nerd, you know that joke, and you've been there, you've done that. You know, oh, my Active Directory is active funny. It's DNS. My email's not working. It's DNS, right?
Yeah.
So SPF is a record that you deploy into your DNS, and you say, hey, here's the story. These are the services and servers that are allowed to send as me. And so for a lot of our customers, that's going to come down to, that's Office 365, that's, those sort of solutions. Maybe you're using MailChimp or Exclaimer, one of these other tools, your marketing team's using MailChimp to send out marketing. Maybe you're sending email from your website. Maybe you're sending email from a copier on your Office. So you create this SPF record, and it's a list of the solutions that are allowed to send as you. And it's really a required thing these days. If you don't have an SPF record, you're going to have trouble getting email through because, as you said, email by default will let me spin up an email server and say, hey, I'm google.com. I'd like to send you an email from google.com. By default, SMTP would allow that. With SPF, it's the first layer of, Google has a published list of who's allowed to send as them, as them, and your home address is not one of those places. So I know you're not Google.
So let me speak to the business owner. For those people out there that don't know what DNS is, um, essentially, like the way we want to put it, right, is that imagine your GoDaddy, where your domain name is, and it's really that translation of making IP addresses into a, an actual name convention, like so and so at whatever blank.com. And so you're basically saying, hey, I'm allowing, since I use Outlook, I'm allowing Outlook to, or Outlook Online, I'm allowing Outlook Online to send as my domain name. And that's really what it is, right? Like you're saying, hey, and so that's how it's tracked, is through your actual public domain name server.
Yep.
And so that's where it's just kind of go back on that. That's a pretty simple thing. The SPF's pretty simple, right? You just throw it in there and you're like, hey, there's the record for Office 365 Online. Here's your record for MailChimp or whoever it is. And otherwise, you are marked as spam.
Yep. Agreed.
Is that right?
Agreed. Marked as spam or rejected, depending on how the following policies we talk about exist. A couple gotchas on SPF to be aware of. Number one, you can only have one record. You could create as many SPF records you want in your public DNS. As soon as you have two, you've broken SPF and you'll fail. You need one record, and you can build it in a way where you put the long string. You can have up to 10 lookups in that record, and so you can have 10 services. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind. And one of my recommendations is every time you mess with an SPF record, as soon as you're done publishing it, go hit MX Toolbox and do an SPF lookup. It'll audit your SPF record and tell you, did you fat finger something? Do you have a period in the wrong spot? Do you have to? It'll go check it for you. And you really want to do that. I've definitely messed up some SPF records over the years and regretted it. It's easy to mess up.
100% agree with you, Nathan. Like, I would say, if anything, ensure one SPF record is pretty simple. Can't really kind of hard to mess that up. Once you start adding more and not having the right, symbols and or spaces, you can really mess that one up.
Can.
So it's a good.
It can.
Great recommendation.
There's another layer there real quick on that. Let me two more points.
Okay.
One is that you can you do also want to keep your SPF record clean. So if you're using Exclaimer and then you decide not to use Exclaimer, it's really important to go, or MailChimp, it's really important to keep that clean. There are some interesting ways that people can kind of hijack your domain and say, oh, you're not using MailChimp anymore, but you still have it in your SPF. Well, what if I open a MailChimp account in your name? Now I'm going to be more trusted as you. So it is important to keep an eye on and keep some hygiene in that. There's also some layers of what's called open source intelligence for the threat actors, where they can learn things about you through your SPF records. So you want to keep it clean. Really think long and hard if you really want to be sending email from the copier at the office and putting that IP in your SPF record. Some stuff like that. And there's some great third-party tools we're going to talk about throughout this. People like Valamail, Easy DMARC, a bunch of DMARC tools. We'll get to DMARC in a second, but a lot of the DMARC tools will help you manage your SPF and give you really good reporting or flattening. Some businesses can't get under that 10 lookup limit, and that is a real problem. Well, these third-party tools do what's called flattening. They give you one short SPF record that allows them to manage all your sources on the back end. So a little more technical on that side, but there's some interesting things you can do on this side.
So if you're a bigger company and you're looking and you have all these different services sending mail as you want to make sure that they're marked correctly so they're not blocked. Hence the reason you probably won't want to, if you have something like 10, you really want to use a service like that.
You do, absolutely. The next technology is called DKIM, and that stands for DomainKeys Identified Mail. And the idea is that this signs the email to verify their authenticity. And so the sending server says, hey, I've cryptographically signed this email, and said that that this email was sent and authorized by me. So it kind of takes the hash of the email and signs it and puts that in the header of the email. So the receiving email can go, oh, I just got an email from Brandon at Uncommon. I see it signed, and I can go look at their public DNS record that has a DKIM public key, and I can compare that public key to the signed the key in your email and quickly tell if this is a valid email from Brandon or not. And so this is a critical step because there's this piece here of we're talking about how like email is kind of this free form thing. But if you start to sign your emails, then the email filters can start to say, oh, I noticed that all the emails coming from Brandon are always signed. And so I not only have more confidence in what he's sending me, but when I see an email that's unsigned from him, that puts less confidence in that and allows me as the mail filter to really start to dial in how much I trust email from this person. So
I like it.
DKIM's key, especially with certain public services. I'll give you an example. A lot of people use
Yeah.
HubSpot as their CRM. Great tool, really awesome. It's really approachable, cheap way to get into CRM for a business. Can run your website off of there, send out mailers, that sort of thing, develop business. HubSpot is notorious for not honoring their own SPF records for their email. You throw your SPF record in there for HubSpot, but it doesn't always align. But they will allow you to sign all your HubSpot emails with your DKIM. So it gives you another layer of, hey, this email that I'm sending out as marketing is trustworthy because it's signed by me. I've proven that it came from me. And that can be critical,
Right.
especially as you're trying to develop business. It's really important to be able to kind of make your marketing content be trustworthy, because otherwise it's going to be filtered as spam, as phishing, that sort of thing, because it's another step removed from a real person sending an email.
And then I would say with DKIM, it's really become more popular. Well, not popular, but more usable over the last 5 years or so. When we first started implementing DKIM, I don't think, I mean, having these other services, your spam filters and all your other stuff, at first really weren't, it was really hard to tie them in, but I think it's gotten a lot easier to start use DKIM in a global scale.
Agreed. A lot.
What happens when you have multiple records and multiple, how do you use it when you have multiple services that are emailing at?
Most of the services now are publishing a document on how to run DKIM with their service. Usually you have to go put a record in your DNS. You go back into the third-party
Right.
service, check a box. It makes sure that record's properly published under your domain, and then it starts signing all the email as you. As you said 5 years ago, many vendors couldn't spell DKIM. Now it's become a requirement. So your MailChimps, your HubSpots, your MSP tools, they almost all have a DKIM document now. And it's generally pretty straightforward. They're going to walk you through it through that document. It's pretty simple to create those records. So it has come a long ways on that side, and it really allows you to validate those third-party solutions.
All right. I like it. I mean, that's obviously like a level up from SPF.
Correct.
From that first attempt to secure your mail or who it's coming from.
Yes.
So what's the point of DMARC, or what's the point of DMARC
Yeah,
with DKIM?
DMARC, DMARC stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting, and Conformance. And the name is actually really good for breaking down what it is, right? It's based on your domain. It's tied to your domain. It's message authentication. So it's a way to kind of validate the authentication expected on your email, message reporting, and then message conformance to your policies. And so what it is it's another DNS record. All three of these are all based on DNS. It's always DNS. It's a record, and basically it's a way of saying that, hey, I'm Nathan. I have my domain name, my supersecretsquirrels.net email address, and
Right.
I am telling the world that I have dialed in my SPF and DKIM. And what it really is, DMARC is an authoritative statement on your SPF and DKIM posture. So those two previous technologies we just talked about, if you put the work in to say, I've dialed in my SPF, I trust my SPF, I've dialed in my DKIM, I trust my DKIM, you're not going to get emails from me that are not signed by DKIM or don't pass my SPF. I'm really confident in what I've built there. You can set
Right.
a policy with DMARC that says either none, so my policy is don't worry about it, I don't have it dialed in well, or quarantine is the second step. Hey, quarantine any email that doesn't pass DKIM or SPF, or reject it. Don't even receive it. Send an NDR. It's not from me. I'm certain that I've got my email dialed in. So DMARC's a little bit more of a next step. It's a little bit less of just publishing some records. As we mentioned before, it's a lot easier if you're using a third-party tool. DMARCian, Easy DMARC, Valamail, Cloudflare. There's a lot of providers out there providing solutions. And what you do is in your DMARC config, it can be this longer text record that says, hey, my DMARC is, I'm using DMARC, send any reporting on email you get to this email address. And this is how strictly I want you to enforce my SPF and DKIM. And then that third-party reporting really gives you a dashboard where you can see, oh, I can see that I'm regularly sending email as 365. I'm sending email as Exclaimer. I'm sending email as as HubSpot and Mailchimp. But I'm also sending email from this IP in Japan, and I'm also sending email from you know from from another marketing tool that I know I didn't sign up for. And it gives you a dashboard to be able to say, oh, I see that there's a hacker pretending to be me in Japan. That's going to happen. If you're a bigger domain, you're going to see that. Um, and your marketing team signed up for another marketing tool and didn't tell you. And so it gives you a chance to really see
Right.
who's sending email as you, make sure your security is aligned with that. And as you dial in that reporting and dial in your records, you can get to that point where you can say, I'm so confident in my email that I'm going to tell the world that if it's not signed or aligned to my SPF, don't accept it. It's not me, and you don't want to hear it. So it gives you a chance to really dial in that conversation and make sure that
Right.
it's tightened up for you.
So just from a business aspect, I mean, these tools sound pretty awesome, right? I mean, they do a good job of stopping just bad actors or bad emails from coming to, trying to send as me and or coming into me. And it's this huge attempt to stop all the spam,
Yes.
right? The truth of the matter is there's still a lot of addresses out there that are just going to get through. And there's no one size fits all
No.
spam filter. Do you know of any one size fits all that's going to stop all the bad spam and the bad emails coming in?
No, absolutely not. And that's why we need to add layers. And so these are 3 layers. And what's interesting about these layers is these layers are really about what I'm sending. It's about validating me. And I want to do this for my customers, so all my customers are aligned. And if you can build that where, hey,
Right.
me and my customers, we're all sending trustworthy email, it kind of raises that bar. On the inbound side, I'm always a fan of layers of security. Microsoft Defender for Office 365 is really good at doing like safe links and safe attachments. Um,
Right.
and so it gives you a chance to go through and build out
It's
some,
like a pre-known list from Microsoft, right?
yeah,
I mean, you can also, it scans for emails that are known bad links, known bad attachments if someone reports them. That's a great one. Um, what about, so on top of those kind of things, what else would you recommend?
um, so I think Defender for Office 365 is great. It adds a couple layers. I do like some of having multiple eyes on it. So there's third-party email filtering. I love Microsoft, but their email filtering is solid, but not always enough, in my opinion. So I'm a big
Right.
fan of a product called Iron Scales. It runs in through the API over Microsoft and goes and looks at all your email and checks it for phishing, checks it against the database. It uses AI on it. There's a lot of third-party tools like that.
What's it called?
That one's called Iron Scales. But
Iron
but there's
Scales.
a lot
Okay.
of other. There's Avanade and Proofpoint and Abnormal Security. So it really makes it so that there's a lot of different providers out there, and I think there is value in putting those third parties in play. From a technical perspective, one of my recommendations is really be careful with the solutions that require you to change your MX record. A lot of these services want you to run your mail through them. It's
Right.
not a bad thing. You just need to understand the impacts of that when you make that change.
When you're quarantined, I mean, I think a lot of us have used other tools, and also in your quarantine is not through Microsoft. Your quarantine is through like a whole nother service.
Yes,
Then you have to tie in. Like, there's a lot more. So just make sure that people don't understand that you really do have to make a good choice with that. Otherwise, you're going to reteach everyone how to do their
yes,
job. Find emails because sometimes there's also some valid emails that come through
yes. False positives.
when it's not supposed to be blocked,
Yeah,
right? So that's that quarantine and teaching your mailbox to, hey, I'm supposed to get this email from my mom, even though she uses this old AOL address that seems like
yes.
a spam address, right?
We all know an executive at every company that uses Gmail to send a lot of email to themselves. It's a thing.
Yeah,
So,
Gmail is, and a lot of, just FYI, just to all the people out there that still have their business as so and so at gmail.com, horrible idea.
yes.
Please don't do it. And secondly, don't do it.
Yeah.
because it's, number one, it's not professional in our minds, but number two, Gmail itself is its own domain that can be blocked by whoever else is using it.
Yes.
And to have your own domain name is very important to protect yourself
Yes.
at the end.
Yes. You can build all this
Right?
this from framework we just talked about around that and make sure it's controlled. And the other problem is so much phishing and spam does come through Gmail. So the filters have a really hard time understanding what's phishing and what's your CEO emailing himself. That's a challenge.
Because they're free accounts, right? I mean, they're free. You can set up a free Google account anytime
Yeah.
and go. So let me tell you about the most important email security that I know of. And let me guess that you're probably going to say it, right?
It involves 3 letters, doesn't it?
I don't know. I would say it's training.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Yep.
So to me, the most important piece to me is a lot of times at the end of the day, it's going to get to the end user, right? It's going to get to Sandy at the front desk that goes, "Oh, well, someone told me to put my password in," and so we want to make sure that we're training people properly because that's who it stops. That's who the buck stops with at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's other tool sets. I probably am. I'm like you said, there's layers here, right?
Yes.
But how important is training? And we can kind of get to these other layers we can throw in there too.
Yeah, there's two ways to look at training. One level is that it's just hard. We're humans and our brains are not built for this.
Yeah.
We're not built for doing threat detection on email. And I feel that personally at my current employer. I get fish tested a couple times a week. They are very serious about it. They
Man.
do it a lot. And it's been a really interesting experience to be a human in the technology space being exposed to my own frailty because they get me. They get me about once a quarter because they'll send me, like yesterday, I was going into a meeting with my boss and I got an email from him asking me to review a document. And as you're moving through your day, you are moving quickly and you go click on that link before you know it, you've been caught with a fish test. And you're like, dang it, you
Yeah.
got me. Because I wasn't sitting here thinking, oh, there's a threat actor after me. I got a meeting with my boss in 30 minutes and he sent me an email. I want to be prepared. And,
Right.
yeah, there's the banners at the top that say this email is not trustworthy. It didn't come from a known source. Like all the information is there for me to know that I should be careful. But my brain is not engaged in those things that I see every day. It's very hard. So I think um, this, testing and training is really important to give us that framework. And it's just another layer. Like I said, email's got to be all of these layers if we have to start to learn how to kind of put as many guardrails as we can. Has it changed how I read email? A little bit. Now that I'm getting caught once a quarter, I don't want to get caught again because I got to watch the stupid training and go, have the walk of shame of, yeah, I fell for another phishing test, but it also is training me over time to be more careful about what I do with my email. The one yesterday, I caught it. I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is another test. Oh, you got me. Almost got me, but I caught it and I was able to go report it. So it does work. And I think it's critical. So, and it's required by like cybersecurity insurance policies. Like it's just a non-negotiable. You have to be doing security awareness training. So,
Well, not only that, just giving people examples of what's happened, right?
yes.
I mean, to me, we talk about DKIM, DMARC, and SPF. I've seen many times over. Actually, yeah, when first time I saw it, I was very amazed. But some other company somewhere else trying to spoof, they got into someone's email, and then they sent instead of, I think they were actually a part of the client. So like here they weren't the requests that can happen and the way these people pay attention and get into someone's system. And then they literally send an email pretending to be another company that's requesting a payment, and they flipped it. So they had the SPF record, they had the DKIM in place, but they flipped the letter, like
Yes.
just the two letters, like the I and the A. So looked on the brain, you're not looking, but you're flipping those letters, and it still says, "Hey, we've changed our wire transfer codes. Can you please wire here and payment for blah 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 amount?" Right?
Yes.
And then they do it because it looks legitimate,
Yes.
right? Sounds like them, looks like them, and so that's not something that's the human mind. You can't just block everything,
Right.
and that's where I think the training can really be a piece of that.
Yeah.
And like you said, this email as external, it should be a warning,
Yeah.
right? But
yeah. Right. Well, and then
Yeah.
you add another layer. You need to have accounting policies. Hey, we don't do ACH changes without verifying through a couple channels. Make a phone call. Hey, I saw you change your ACH. Was that you? No. Oh man, and that's a really common thing we see now where somebody's email will get compromised and it's used to attack one of their clients or vendors, not the company that was compromised.
Mhm.
Right? It's like this layers of things, and so you have to have layers of controls around that.
And they've also, so just a kind of caveat off of what you're saying, I've also heard that with more like having accounting rules for the team, that any change or having like a double check, I guess what they call it, something along those lines, where they're like, we have to verify with so and so and so and so and so and so before we make any of these changes, and or verify the shift. So I think that they've had to put more protocols in there to ensure that they're not sending. They're trying to make sure they send the right money to the right places and
Yeah,
not get
yeah,
bamboozled.
yeah, no question. So when you said the most important security thing, I said a three-letter acronym, and I think that would be
Yeah.
number two on that list is MFA, right? You've got to have
Ah.
multi-factor authentication on your email accounts. If you're not running with full-time MFA, which sadly I still run into, you're missing out because your users get their email phished, their phone, their email, their password phished, or they're using the same password on their work email as they're using on their baby monitor software and their Ring doorbell, and they use the same password everywhere. You have to have that next layer of, yes, you need my password, and you need a one-time code that rotates every 90 seconds to get into my email account, because I think that's the number one threat vector is those business email compromises. Hey, I got into your email as you because you didn't have MFA, and now I can do a lot of damage to you, your customers, and your vendors because I'm now running legitimately as you in your email. And so MFA is critical.
Have you seen? I think I've definitely seen an increase in token spoofing, and where people can, if you do have the 3-digit code, I almost prefer the pop-up code on your phone, because the 3-digit code has been a problem for me when people can, kind of pretend to put that one in there.
Yeah,
Have you seen an increase in
there's
that?
definitely some layers of not all MFA strengths are created equally, right?
Right.
The whole
Yeah, the text message.
approve or deny or the text message. I mean, I've seen executives just get hammered with the text message until they finally give up and say, sure, here's the code, right? And so, like in
Yeah.
Office 365, you could do now the number matching where you have to pull up the app. You have to
Yeah.
look at the number, and the number is a number between 1 and 99, and it shows where it came from and what app, and then you have to provide that
Right.
two-digit code within a certain amount of time to the app on the other side. And it really adds some,
With your fingerprint, Face ID, something along the lines. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. To verify
it
locally.
really makes it so that there's more intentionality and there's not just the approve, 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 and so eventually somebody just accidentally hits approve and they're in, right? So I
Right.
think auth strengths are important. There's also the whole conversation that's coming, and this is a little more technical, but FIDO 2.0 authentication, whether that's like a YubiKey, Defender, Windows Hello for Business on Windows 10 and 11 is actually a full FIDO2 login. And FIDO2 is a
Yeah.
lot more secure to some of the other cyber attacks where people are actually stealing your authentication token from a session. And so, if you're running, you have the opportunity to be on intra ID joined machines. Make sure Windows Hello for Business is enabled and the plugins are installed in Chrome because it's a much more secure way to authenticate. Super nerdy, but goes deep, goes a long ways.
I mean, Nathan, we could talk about this for a very long time,
You could.
right? I mean, we're reaching like half an hour now, and it's time to wrap up. But the truth of the matter is, it goes deeper, right? Because then it becomes down to your machine security. You want to do
Sure.
conditional access for your environment, and so it's just adding on to the complexity of more security, but doing it, giving attention to security and making sure that you're continually adding the layers to
Sure.
prevent the not so nice people out there from doing the bad stuff.
Well, that's a great topic because security is one of those things that us nerds can go deep. We're talking about stealing tokens and
Yeah.
like all that stuff. Those are legit things, and we've seen them in the market. The reality is, what we need to do is that pragmatic minimum viable product. And that
Yeah.
pragmatic minimum viable security is have MFA on your tools, train your
Yep.
users, and you
Yep.
have to have DKIM, SPF, and DMARC these days. Google is getting to the point, Google, Yahoo, and Apple will not accept email from you if you don't have a DMARC record. So you need all three
Correct.
on every domain you have. Get your SPF, DKIM, and DMARC going. If you haven't done that,
Start there.
you have to go
Yeah.
do that. It's a little intimidating, but somebody who understands it, it's not hard. It can be done pretty quickly. And now you've got some basic levels of protection. You got your MFA, you got security awareness training, you got your basic DNS protections. I'd love to nerd out with you on a couple more advanced things. I think DNSSEC is really important to get enabled. There's some new technologies coming out from Microsoft called DANE for SMTP. That's going to become a thing in the next year, where Microsoft's really trying to add some additional layers of authentication on the back end. And if you're a bigger business, there's some things you could do, like a BIMI record to really validate your public email. But those are super technical and fun to nerd out on. Maybe we can have a conversation about that later. But for your average business owner, get the basics done. MFA, security awareness training, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. And you're a leg up on almost everybody in the industry by doing those things. So
absolutely. And don't forget, compliance is going to come down, right? We have CMMC coming out, and you're going to be, not only if you're breached, you're going to have to pay the government, because they're going to fine you for leaking information.
yes.
So just beware, right?
Yes, no question.
Nathan, thank you so much, and we'll maybe we'll do a part 2 to email security. We'll go even deeper for the nerds and go super deep. Tell some crazy stories about the amount of money, the other crazy things you can do in the environment, right?
So, yes, no question.
Until next time, Nathan, anything else you want to add? We'll kind of wrap it up for our Friday.
It's always fun to chat about this stuff with you, man. Thanks for your time today. It was fun.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk to you soon, and appreciate everyone that listens to us. All 5 of you that do.
Thanks, Mom.
We hope you like it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us comments. Have a great day.